What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate you all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I want to talk a little bit about staying the course and realizing that the answer is always making peace with the present moment. It's like so many times it's easy to start to get lost in patterns of thoughts, but not to sit there in battle with thoughts, but to look at those as a good indicator of the state that you're being, and looking at it as being helpful. Changing how you're reinterpreting everything that's going on, and realizing God didn't make a mistake. These things they're unfolding perfectly. Looking at everything as unfolding in the correct way, in the perfect way, and trying to find joy in that, and not feeling incomplete or any of these types of things that might present as symptoms. It's part of the old nature to get stuck in this cycle where you are observing what is, and then your thoughts start to confirm that state of what is, and then it almost creates this feedback loop where it's like, oh, since you believe it, it's more and more and more intense. And the new man kind of recognizes this pattern a little bit better. And so instead of just being hung up on what is and what others and stuff are mirroring to you at this particular moment, start being who you are created to be, which is love. It ultimately is peace and joy, and looking towards that whenever things start to spin out and going, hey, how does God, who is love, see and experience this right now? What is the perfection in what's happening? If everything's deliberate and everything's on purpose, what's the purpose of this? How can and start asking yourself these things and go within. Don't really depend on, oh, look, what does Mike have to say? Let's go have him be my whatevers. This is part of growing into your own free self. If anything, use this as a stepping stone to a bigger vision, but like use all these types of things in that way. But start to look at not tomorrow, and this is like something that happens if you start getting maybe in a law of attraction type of vibe, where it's like, oh, this imaginary you made it moment, where it's going to, the present moment when this event happens outside of you manifests, then all of a sudden you've made it and it's a utopia, and you don't have any of these problems, and everything is just joy, bliss, and ease, and and that's always in the future. It's like even looking at the programming of, oh, you got to sacrifice, and then you get old, and then you die, and then you go to heaven. It's the same flow, just different ways of looking at it. But start bringing that future event now. It's like, how can you today in this very moment bring a little bit more heaven into the situation? Bring a little bit more love into the situation. Instead of being reactive to what is, and then all of a sudden your thoughts start corresponding to what is, and then it starts compounding and creating a feedback loop. Start to ask yourself, who do you want to be right now in this particular moment, and start to embody that. What is coming to mind that makes you feel incomplete? Or if I only had fill in the blank, then I could be happy. Start working on stewarding what you have now, and growing that from there, and realizing that as you choose actively what you want to be. Do you want to be happy today? Do you want to be joyful today? As you embody that state inwardly first, and then just trust in God's ability to miraculously bring these things to fruition. And if it's it's all part of letting go. And letting go, it almost feels scary, like, oh, if I just wrestled it to the ground, then I could make it happen, instead of just trusting God to make it happen, and to watch how it unfolds in the present moment. It has already happened. God's already done it. You push it away. So and you push it away because you're afraid. Ultimately, you're afraid to step into it. And as much as that might be triggering to hear, it's like, until if you have this vision in your mind, this imaginary scene, and that's part of the Neville Goddard kind of rabbit hole of imagining, and biblically there's a lot of correlation with that. But until you actually step into the unknown and bring that more and more so into the present moment, your new life, the more you almost get stuck in a fantasy world, But instead of just, and not saying that's a bad, space to be in, but if you want to take it up a notch and kind of radically start to make moves in your environment, in your bubble of reality, you start to look at everything that's unfolding, even right now, as being not sitting there judging it, but like accepting it, seeing the good in it, even if maybe somebody's presenting something to you that's that's obviously triggering. Realize that if you're experiencing that exists inside of you as well, and so learn from it. Learn to either see, if someone's like bringing a bunch of scarcity to you and is freaking out, start looking at them as being abundant. Start imagining that for them and just letting it go, dropping. And think of it like planting a seed in a garden. It's like you have these imaginary, wishing someone well, positive energy, towards another person, but not sit there and like, well, if only you were more pleasing to me, then I could be happy with you. Start to really getting less condition, and start unconditionally accepting people. And not to say that that's where they'll always be. If you're somebody that and love is a drug addict, for example, that's not who they are. But they might be presenting that state of consciousness. They might be being that, but that's not who they actually are. And start seeing them as healthy, making different choices in their life, successful. Any of these types of things. Just put yourself in their shoes. What would you want others to do for you if you fell into a state unconsciously, and all of a sudden you're in this feedback loop, and it's just compounding and compounding and compounding. See somebody, that's being a slave to that as free, and looking at all these states of like the old man, that's what you let go of. That's the sacrifice to be made. Let go of that old state that's not working, that's bringing you nothing but torment and pain, and put on the new state, of who you actually are. Love, joy, peace, abundance, health, all of these types of positive attributes of who you actually are, that you realize that through what you're not, by when you experience what you're not, it sucks. It doesn't feel good, and it just feels like contrary to everything that you believe. It's like, what is this about? And then you get stuck in these cycles, and catching the cycles faster and faster, and say, hey, I'm not going to sit here and just be a slave to this outer situation. I'm not going to keep looking out here for my joy and peace, and if things were only this way out here. You start to embody that now because of an identity, a new identity that you're being, and that identity is, combined with your relationship with your creator, with love ultimately. The less that you're just kind of living in a state of fear, the more it just naturally who you are just surfaces. It's like, think of fear as like a weight on a helium balloon. Helium balloons naturally just want to float. And that's the same thing with your consciousness. When you're being who you actually are, you naturally float and expand and grow. It's the anchors of fear, these scraps of fear that hold you down. And so when you're actually starting to take a new vision and radically start being something different. It's like for me, for example, for a quick update on my handyman business, because that's been, part of this flow of this playlist. I've got 2 guys now that are working for me, and so it's been really intense for me. These past, just doing this this new pivot. And it's been really intense, and it's become more obvious. Like when you change states, the thoughts start to reflect that change of state. Not to get caught up on the thoughts, but if you're in the old man, your thoughts are like, oh, you're a loser, you're not good enough, you're this fear, that fear, this other kind of fear. But when you change states to maybe more abundance, prosperous state, like a creating kind of state, if you're like in a business kind of environment, it's like, really, I've been having a lot of thoughts on, paying these guys good, and, make sure they got plenty of work, and, that they're, ultimately the goal is to pay them more than they even thought was possible to get paid. and really bring that out in them, and bless them in that way. And there is like also another motivation too, where it's like, well, what I give to them, I also give to myself, and so really exploring that oneness and that connectedness, and standing in faith, because a lot of times, so far what I've experienced with bringing in these two new guys, and I got the third one I'm going to talk to at 1:00, which is in 3 hours from now, and so or 2 hours from now, and try to get him on board too. And there's some drama with that, and a lot of times facing these unknowns, it's like at the beginning of the week. They had the second guy kind of had this weird situation where he started kind of unexpectedly, and instead of getting mad at the situation, just looking at that as a sign to pull the trigger, because I could get stuck in dragging my feet, and it's like, okay, well, let's radically just do this. The balls, the hardest part's already been done. The shift has already happened, and so looking at everything that's unfolding now as evidence that it's already done, it's already happened. The hiring these three guys, getting that going, it's already paid off. It's already successful. There's nothing to worry about. God's already blessed the entire thing, and jobs are gonna be, I don't know, like miraculously, they'll just happen. Just happen naturally and organically, and it'll seem like to the outside world who doesn't understand a lot of these consciousness, just rules of creation, basically, that there is rules to creation. We'll look at the bridges of incidents and go, well, it would have been inevitable anyway, because this happened and this happened and this happened, and pointing to the outer situation, instead of making the connection that this is a result of an inner state of being. This is a result of faith, and this is a result of standing in that conviction, in faith. And so you look at it two ways, like everything else in this realm. You could look at it, like, oh well, he's just crazy, and there's this bridge of incidents that it would it would have happened anyway. Or he's like, well, through faith and keeping that state of being, walking into that, making that inward change, then there's an outer reflection. So either way, it's got the same result for the whatever's that it's observing, but to enlighten others. This is just my mindset about it. But like and so with these guys, going, it almost feels like kind of like when I was like first with my now wife, she had kids and stuff. It's like taking on kids, like, oh shit, this is crazy. But then it all starts working out, and I've seen that happen so often and so frequently that it's not surprising, how these things, it's just taking that jump into the unknown, which can be intense and also thrilling and exciting and exhilarating, and realizing more and more so that as it's unfolding in the present moment, the present moment is when these things happen. This is when things happen, is now, not in imaginary future land. Oh, what's my 6 months from now going to look like? Oh, what's the next quarter going to be? This is all mental. It's maybe good to have a vision like that, maybe more long term, but what are we going to do today? How can we do something positive today? As this unfolds, you never know when the phone's going to ring, and we just go hop on something. It's a rainy today, so one of my guys is cleaning out the garage and getting that more organized, where keep tools and whatnot. And so now it is just coming together in this kind of miraculous way. It's exciting and at the same time thrilling. But to look at the thoughts and what's unfolding presently as the indicator of what state is being first, and so if there becomes some unconscious drifting into maybe doubt or fear, one of the first things that will start to happen is, say you're kind of in flow, you're in the new man, you're in the present moment, you're vibing in that, and maybe you'll see some scrap of fear from the outside world. Maybe someone will say something, maybe something might happen that might stir up a little doubt that's already there, that's holding you unconsciously in a pattern, that's keeping you from the actual fullness of who you are. and instead of like looking at that as like, oh shit, I knew this is blah blah blah, and you make an excuse, and then you fall back into your old state. Not to do that, not to let the outer situation or circumstance dictate what you're being, and be it regardless, until then all of a sudden there starts to be a new unfoldment that starts to happen in the present moment as you stand in faith in the new man, in the new state. It starts to come together, and you start to see that, and you witness that with your own eyes as these things happen. I was kind of like freaking out. I don't want to say totally freaking. I mean, like, it's been so intense, and so all these things, and I ended up just getting a big painting job. I got the deposit and everything, and it's like, yeah, boys, we're in business, and so and so it's all now come together. But there was a couple days of standing in faith, now not really knowing, not really how's this going to happen, just letting that pass, just breathe and get back into the it's only ever now. Now is when this happens. So what is the purpose of expanding and doing this anyway? Then it's like, well, to finance the cafe. I was like, well, why do you want to do the cafe? Well, and then you start, it's like, what is what you're doing out in the outer trying to point you towards something on the inside? Are you doing it just because it's fun? That's a good enough reason. It's just fun. It's just exciting, and it's thrilling. It's something fun to do. It's almost game-like. Feels like playing a video game. And only it's like it's a little bit more whatever than a video game, but like it starts to feel very dreamlike and game-like after a while. But like looking at that, well, it's like, well, if you had the cafe, if you had these three guys, that are in sync, you get this really solid team, you get the really solid cafe, awesome place for the community, awesome place to chill, hang out, creates an awesome environment for the town, awesome environment, to raise collective consciousness, show others what is possible, and get the ball rolling. How would that make you feel? Who would you be if that was already a success? And that's what you connect with. How would you feel once that's already achieved? Because that's who you actually are. God's already made that happen. God's already provided the cafe, provided however many customers and employees and everything else that can be blessed through doing this. And so the only thing stopping that is I'm going to spend the now in a state of fear and reactivity, and creating a feedback loop that's going to just keep spinning, and instead trusting what is unfolding as a indicator of a state. And that's all, including your thoughts. It's not to sit there and battle with thoughts, not to sit there and judge the thoughts, but just to look up of it objectively as going, I'm having a lot of doubt-based thoughts. I'm starting to express that state. Oh, and then maybe the next thing that's like maybe someone says something to you that maybe kind of reinforces a little bit more doubt, and quickly catch that and go, well, I'm not doubt. I'm not what this state is representing. That's I used to be that state. I used to be the old man. The old man used to embody states of fear. The new man embodies states of love and gratitude and peace and joy and all these states that feel good. And if you get, in some of these cycles starting to present, it's like, well, how does God see the situation? How does love see the situation? Because love is with me right now. So how does, and then go within and ask and start getting clarity and seeing how these patterns start to present themselves over and over in your own life. And it's between you and God how to resolve these things. This is just what I'm doing. This is what's working for me. And not to say this is the only way of doing it. This is how I'm doing it. Ultimately go within and work on that relationship with God, and let the Spirit teach you how to do these things. That's the probably the best guidance. But like, this is just how I'm handling these things, and it's like it seems to be pretty helpful, especially after spending so much energy and time battling with thoughts and like trying to maybe just sit in a space where there's nothing and total, I don't know, stillness and silence, which I don't think is a bad thing, but realize you're not your thoughts, but when your thoughts are spinning out, almost feeling like, oh, you're worthless, and you're not good enough to do that, it's like, oh, you're someone, that's bringing you down. when you could have what am I trying to say? You have different thoughts. When you're being states of love, which you actually are, that are empowering and make you feel good, and is encouraging for others, and caring, and all these different things are corresponding to what you're being. So not you aren't the thoughts, even when they're feel good thoughts, but you can start using them as an indicator to unfold more and more high vibe states, and not to because you are already a high vibe being. So it's like you don't have to strive and struggle and achieve to be these things. God's grace has given you these things already. You are already these things. And so it's a process of realizing it. And you start to realize it through faith, that you are already these things. The only thing to sacrifice is the state that is no longer serving you and no longer who you are. And it was an illusion to begin with. These states of fear that all of a sudden caught you in a feedback loop and got you spinning out, making you feel drained of energy and everything else. When you can start turning that around in the new man by embodying this new state first, and as you start working on realizing that ultimately the old man wants to wrestle things to the ground and do all these types of things like that. I like to do things. I think that's one of the easiest ways to start turning your thoughts around into a new state, is by actively moving in that direction of it's already done. So I'm going to start acting. I'm going to start being this. I'm going to start doing this. And as you're doing now, then the thoughts start to change. But not saying that's the only way. I think everybody's unique, and the right answer is within. So ultimately, looking at that though, and going, okay, whatever's corresponding right now in the inner world, it's all happening now. And so, what's going to happen in 3 hours from now? Well, if I'm not at peace right now, I'm just going to be creating a feedback loop, and things might start spinning out. But ultimately, realizing that I just need to stop pushing away the opportunities that God's presenting right now, and using my logical brain of the past, which is no longer, that's part of like the old man interpretation of things, where it's like, through my experience, I want to keep replicating the same thing over and over and over again. Kind of embracing this kind of unknown is like whatever is being happening, whatever's unfolding right now, trying to make sense of it in this new way. Ultimately, you can use your past experience, but be open to trying new things, because in these new things there's so much stuff, and expansion. You can grow and experience new things, exciting new things. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys to keep focused on the present moment, and realize that everything is being mirrored. And so if you start to connect more and more with stewarding, just taking care of what you already have, and if there's stuff that comes up that's obviously not who you are anymore, start moving in a new direction and start being. Don't become a slave to reactivity to the outer whatever's presenting, because you're just seeing the past. When you start embodying the new, there might be a time delay. But in that, you're letting go of a lot of the stuff that's a lot of the weights that are keeping you from floating, to that new state that you're actually desiring to be. And so, with that being said, I think I'm going to bounce. Thanks for listening, everybody, and have a good rest of your now, and God bless.